Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Box Gaming, a podcast where we talk about games. Why? Because we want to, and because we think that we have something to say that you may want to hear. I am your host, Nick Picard, and joining me, as always, is the man, the myth, and the legend, Will Kinsey.
What?
All right. This week, we have a special guest joining us, and I want you to please welcome our friend, the commander himself, Ethan Bourne.
What's up, guys?
All right.
Hey.
So, how are both of y'all doing?
I'm fantastic. You know, it's a Saturday morning. I've had 3 cups of coffee. I'm ready to go.
Will, what about you?
I'm doing well, sir. Preparing for my move. So gonna have a busy day ahead of me, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm
Okay.
raring to go.
All right, sounds great.
How are you doing, sir?
I am doing well. Got waken up for early by a cat because they were hungry, and then I went in and I started playing some video games before this. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we want to share our love of games with you guys and maybe introduce you to something new. Or not. That's cool too. And we also want to hear from you, so feel free to drop topic ideas and discussion questions that you would like for us to discuss.
All right, now please welcome our producer Lindsay to start us off with our trivia question of the episode.
Hi, guys. Today's podcast is Magic the Gathering themed, so I wanted to theme my question around that. Okay? So here's my question for today. In their first press conference or press announcement about their upcoming trading card game, Wizards of the Coast did not refer to the game as Magic the Gathering. What was it called? Now, I do have answer choices if you would like them. Do we agree collectively that we want answer choices?
I would say yes because
Absolutely.
I have no idea, but you can.
Yeah. Wow.
She went deep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll give answer choices. So your choices are, and you'll see they're all themed, like they're all similar. Choices are A, Mana Bound, B, Mana Bloom, C, Mana Clash, or D, Mana Flare. So what did they first refer to the game as? Mana Bound, Mana Bloom, Mana Clash, or Mana Flare?
I definitely will be thinking about that one.
Yikes.
Goodness.
I do
That's a-
think that Mana Flare is the name of a card, so maybe we can eliminate that one, or maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know. Well,
If you guys want to think on that question, Lindsay will be back with us at the end of the episode to hear our answers and then tell us what the correct answer is. And if you're watching live, go ahead and feel free to comment your answer, but remember, no cheating. So, Nick,
Yeah.
what have you been playing this last week?
let's see. I feel like I've mostly been playing Fortnite. I know I did like that 2 nights in a row or 3.
New season, new challenges,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, Lindsay's mostly been wanting to play, so I've been playing that with her. You know, we popped off some. We got a couple wins. But,
Oh, snap.
yeah. Other than that, I know I played Batman Arkham City. And I beat the story on that, and then the like the DLC that it had. It was just like a side thing where you play as Robin, and it's like a Harley Quinn type mission thing, and I did that. And then I was just dabbling a little this morning on there, but I'm pretty much done with the game. And then just a a little bit of Overwatch, but not as much as before. So, yeah. What about you, Will? What have you been playing?
Well, not a whole lot. we didn't get to do any of our role plays this week. But we did play a little Terraria, me and the guys on the server that we're running. Alex is kindly hosting it for us. We have our world. I don't know. I know Nick hasn't played a whole lot of Terraria. Ethan, have you played much?
Oh yeah, I played a long time ago with Alex. Yeah, it's
Oh, fantastic.
an awesome
So
game.
you know how the worlds are set up, and kind of how it works. Our server world had at one point probably over 30% of it was crimson,
Hmm.
which is bad. You don't want that. So that's what we've been trying to fix every time we hop on, and it's been a battle. So that was most of what I've been gaming this week. I did jump on Kerbal Space Program again. Um, And I managed to build a jet that can take off and land under very, very, very good circumstances. So I'm very proud of that. And I still haven't figured out how to actually get into orbit. I don't know how high I need to go or what my trajectory
Yeah.
needs to be. So that's a pain in the butt.
I still want to say thanks for helping me like start the Kerbal Space
Yeah.
Program.
Yeah, I know getting the start is kind of difficult, but once you figure out what you're supposed to do, and you taught me how to actually steer my
Oh yeah.
rocket. I didn't know I could do that. Um, but yeah, so Ethan, have you been playing anything this last week, or any games you've been enjoying recently?
Sure. I haven't had time for a lot of video games in the past week. I've been playing. I'm late, but I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, trying to get that massive game done before Valhalla comes out in the fall. But I know recently, me and some friends have been playing an old Fantasy Flight role play set in the 40K Warhammer 40K universe called Death Watch, where these massive alien killing space marines, and that's been pretty fun.
Oh yeah, I've been watching the stream on that
That's
via
awesome.
Alex's stream. I really like
Yeah.
your 10-page backstory character.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of flack for that, man. Like I know another guy was talking about how he was so proud of himself because he typed up a whole page, and I just put him to shame. Everybody's been picking on me, but man, like I'm not a gamer when it comes to those role play games. Like the reason why I play them is like to write a story together, and well, I guess I just got a little into it in the backstory, and I was not on the same page as the rest of my party, but it's okay. It's okay. I know my character. It's good.
Hey, I like it, man. I especially love for being the champion of the people and ignoring your buddy who got his leg
Yeah,
chopped off.
I definitely ignored a friend of mine while he was dying to save some completely pointless NPC. But that's what my character would do. So,
You do what you gotta
Love
do.
it. Exactly.
yeah, he
100%.
didn't die though, so I don't have to feel guilty about that.
Hey, he's a space marine. It takes a lot to kill a space marine.
That's right. He's got a bionic leg now. Everything's good.
So
Yeah.
he's even better and
Yeah.
closer to the machine god.
All as I planned.
All right.
Goodness.
Well, let's go ahead and get into this whole magic thing. So, Ethan, why don't you tell the listeners a little of your history with Magic the Gathering?
Oh man, it's quite a crazy thing. The funny thing is that Will, actually is the one who introduced me to Magic back in college, and
Me?
yeah, it was me, you, and another friend. We went. He just said, "Hey, there's this thing." I don't actually remember exactly how it started, but I know we ended up at a comic shop, and I bought a starter deck, a blue-white Flyers starter deck, and we went back to campus. We were in school together and started playing, and the addiction began in earnest right there. Um, but I mean, those college days were super fun.
Oh yeah.
When we were learning, one of my favorite memories is getting that ping pong table, and we'd put like 15 people around it, and the games would
Yes.
take like 6 hours and only be like 5 turns. Um, but some crazy stuff happened, and a lot of like I made a lot of friends actually in college through Magic. So I guess I owe more to Will than I'd care to admit on that front. So that was kind of how it all started. Those massive games,
Yeah.
and fun and casual. Except I was never really that casual about them. I liked winning.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
That's
you had an unhinged card in one of your decks.
hey, yeah, and I got made fun of brutally for that too. I didn't know what it was. Okay, I had no idea. In case you guys don't know, like there's this whole set in Magic of cards that have a silver border, and they're not legal in any format. They're just fun. They break the fourth wall. So I had this stupid card called Carnivorous Death Parrot. I actually remember because it was basically just a stupid bird, but if I didn't remind my opponent to kill it every turn, it died. And I just remember when we went to there was a gaming shop in the area that we got connected with, and I remember playing the owner, and even we were strangers. We'd only met like once, and even he made fun of me for having that card in my deck. So I blame Will, who was my friend who knew more about it than me, for not warning me that that was not really okay. But cool.
Man, I knew very little about none of us knew anything about that game, to be
No.
honest with you.
You were the older, wizened,
Yeah.
experienced player at the time.
I just remembered like Alex and Will, like y'all two were the ones to introduce me and to start playing it. And then I remember one of the times whenever we went back to the room and Ethan, you and I played a match, and you had it was like a jellyfish card. And I remember you're like, this card is so stupid. Like, why on earth would I want this? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't remember what it did, but you're like, this is the dumbest thing. Like, this shouldn't be a thing.
Oh yeah, it was one of the
Yep.
Gamoas.
Gomozola? I don't know. It was guard Gomoza or Gomoza.
Yeah.
I remember because it couldn't attack, and I thought it was completely stupid.
Yeah.
And Nick is the one who taught me that it was actually completely broken in our format that we were playing, because nobody played kill spells. Nobody played any interaction. And it basically could block anything and couldn't take damage. So, like, if you didn't kill it, it would just sit there and you couldn't attack me.
Yeah.
So,
Guard Gomazoa, yeah. That thing was such a pain in the butt until I put together my black deck.
oh yeah.
But yeah, all of those decks that had walls and random, like, immune to this or prevent all combat damage, they really beat the crap out of my artifact deck, which was the first deck that I played.
Wait, was that the one that you lent to me whenever you, like, moved to Florida?
No, that
Okay.
that one was, that one was silly. I built that one almost right before I moved, actually.
Yeah, and then you're like, here, have this. And I'm like, what is this? And you're like, it's a deck, take care of it. I'm like, okay. And
It
then
was the completely ridiculous, it was the artifact, the Forge deck,
Yeah.
Ethan, if you remember that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That one had an uncard in it too, didn't it?
it had
It
Gleemax.
did.
Is
It
that
had
what?
Gleemax in it.
Yes.
But besides that, it was kind of like, it was still a good build. Not really, it was terrible. It relied completely on Koldatha Forge Master, which is a card that I think it was 5 mana cost for a 3/3 or something like that.
Yeah.
But you could sacrifice 3 artifacts to bring an artifact from your deck and put it on the field.
Yeah. And your deck, it had this thing that we called the button.
It had Nevinrald's Disc.
Yeah. And when we bring it out, we would just, just look at people and be like, "And do you want me to press this button? And you want to lose everything?" No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, it's basically destroy everything on the field. So in the deck, it had a bunch of artifacts that had 0 mana cost. So I could have all of these artifacts on the field quickly, sacrifice them, and then pull out Darksteel Forge, which would make all of my artifacts indestructible, and then Nevinrald's Disc, and then I would blow up everyone else's boards.
Yep.
And then continue to keep going because I didn't need mana, so I didn't need land because I had free artifacts that I would just drop. So that was one of the first ridiculous decks and one of the last ridiculous decks that I built for our casual game nights.
Casual.
Yeah, that wasn't a casual deck, I will say.
It had a
It was.
Gleemax in it.
I know, but at the time we were all terrified of it. It's funny how, as you play a game like that, when you're first starting out, the things that terrify you, and
Yeah.
like that deck blew my mind. That was the first combo deck I ever played against. Like that was actually like I'm trying to build the machine,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and then I just win. And so that was horrifying. I didn't even know that was a thing you could do in a card game. So it's funny when you look back, and I was like, that sounds casual now, but at the time we were all pretty horrified to play it.
Yeah. I was dipping into the mad science of that because I also had that one time where I beat the entire table of like 12 people
Yeah.
with the pyromancy deck that I made.
Oh yeah.
Which I think Nick was there with me when I built it, if I remember correctly.
Maybe
Someone was
if you
there,
start
and
talking about it, I
someone-
may remember.
So it was the one where I had mere galvanizers and amoeboid changelings, and then I think it's young pyromancer or pyromancer's add. It's one that you tap it and do 1 damage. So amoeboid changeling is other card types, and I think you can make other creatures, other card types. But basically, everything was a mirror. And so I had 2 mirror galvanizers and then a mana mirror, amoeboid changeling, and a card that you tapped it and did 1 damage. And so I was constantly untapping and retapping that one with this dumb 5-card combo to do 1 damage over and over again. And I just pinged through one side just constantly of the ring of 12 people. I think I only used that deck maybe twice. But yeah, that was one of the dumb infinite combo decks that I made. I think that was the first infinite combo deck that I made.
I absolutely love decks like that. It's funny. Like I started playing Magic to be with you guys, like to hang out with friends, learn how to do that. But like, it was crazy to me. I've never played another game ever in my life, and I really do think Magic the Gathering is the best game ever made, and I will hold to that. And the reason is it allows for personal expression like that. Like you can sit down and play Monopoly, but you're just gonna have to pick a strategy and kind of play. But with Magic, you can build something that's uniquely yours, that you still talk about years later, that you remember fondly. It's like you can be creative, and it's so complicated that you can do things that somebody who's been playing for 15 years never thought of, and that's just super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we still talk about certain decks that we all loved from those times back then.
Oh yeah,
Like
I still have some of those or most of those decks.
Nick's,
Nick, you had a
Nick's
goblin
dragons
deck.
and goblins. You were red
Well,
a lot, like a lot of really good red decks.
That's what I started in, was red, so I just kind of stuck with that. But my goblin deck, yeah, I still have that. It definitely probably could be improved nowadays, but on average, I can kill somebody from like 4 to 6 turns. If they have not died by then my deck did something wrong. So, and then my dragon deck that eventually turned into a commander deck, because before we didn't know commander, and I was like, hey, dragons, I want to make a dragon deck. So I wanted a bunch of different dragons. So I had a normal, normal 60 card deck, but all my dragons were different. I didn't have like any copies. And then later, whenever we found out about commander, I was like, oh, I should probably change this to a commander deck. It would make a lot more sense. So I did.
Yeah.
And
I get tired of playing against your dragons.
yeah. But one of the decks that I made, and I want to say I was with you, And we were going to that one shop that sold the magic cards, and I just had like a thought. I'm like, oh, I could do this. This is great. I want to do that. It was my ninja deck, where
Oh yeah.
it had the ninjas had ninjutsu, and
Ninjutsu.
and it's whenever a creature is attacking that wasn't blocked, you can pay the ninjutsu cost to bring that ninja card in and take out the creature that wasn't blocked out. You're basically just switching them, and then the ninja is, tapped and attacking. So I was like, I should just do like little unblockable creatures. So that's what I did. So
Yeah.
I know there was one card from Innistrad, I think, or the set after that. It was like the image. It was like a ghost thing. It was a 1/1 unblockable. It was blue. I think just a blue drop
Invisible Stalker.
Yeah, that's it. Invisible Stalker. I remember getting that, and then some other like unblockable creatures that I can't think of the names of them. But I would have that. Oh, it's unblockable there, and I think Invisible Stalker also has hexproof, so they couldn't target it. So I'm like, okay, so I just go and I'm like attacking with that, and it's like, oh, you can't block it, and then pay the cost, and then I knew ninjutsu, the ninja card in, and then each time the ninja does damage to an opponent, it has an effect. Like there was one where you can destroy a non-black creature, or you get to look at the player's hand, or you get to bring a card from like opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield, or different things like that. So that was one of my favorite decks that I built. And then obviously, like, since we were still early into the game, I would come across problems. I remember facing our friend Joey, like one of his decks, and he had a bunch of like flying. I'm like, well, I don't know what I can do against the flying. So then I looked at the card. It was like levitation, where all my creatures have flying. So I just kind of threw that in there and see. I don't know if I have it in there now, because it doesn't do that great or made, a lot of sense with it. But, it was just nice to be like, oh, I'm getting beat by this. I'm just going to throw this in here just to counter that. And, it kind of worked.
Yeah, Nick,
Also,
you're the
before
OG
we knew about
metagamer, dude.
Yeah.
There was something cool about that. Like, we didn't know, like, this is before we really spent a lot of time reading on the internet and ruining our experience.
Yes.
We were just kind of like playing and discovering. And I remember that too. Like metagaming wasn't a term I'd actually even heard of at this point in my life. Like the game within the game, but we certainly did that. Like, we were playing each other so often that we would tailor our decks to beat one another. And man, that was just so cool. Like putting in levitation. That was really awesome. That same guy had another deck that gained just a ton of life.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
One. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like if you, and that was actually, Will, thanks to you, the first time I put a combo in a deck was to beat him, because I couldn't actually attack him fast enough to kill him with most of my decks. The best way to beat a life gain deck is to just instantly win. That was a fun time when we didn't know, like, people would play a card and we'd be like, ooh, what's that? I've never heard of that. That was good times. It was like the Wild West.
Yeah, real quick, speaking of that life gain deck, I played, at the time it was my Goblin deck, and I got him down to 1 life. And I needed just do 1 more damage, but I didn't have anything. The next turn he gained life, and I couldn't beat him after that. He just kept gaining. He
game with 2,000 life.
Like, he just kept gaining life, and I'm like, all right, I'm done. I can't beat you now. I did what I could.
I remember I played a game with him. We played a game of doubles. Me and him were on a team against another 2 people, and we were both playing life gain decks. And by the end of the game, we had to use a calculator to keep track of our life. And then I'm pretty sure by the end of the game, the number was so big, neither of us knew what the number was called. Of life. So there was some crazy stuff going on.
I don't remember much from my early my early years of playing, just because I was so confused most of the time. I do
Yeah.
remember one game. We had we were doing like groups of 4, and I remember playing against Cody Lakin, and he ended up with so much life and so many like creature tokens that there was nothing any of us could do. And I was so frustrated.
I mean, there was one time Alex helped me make this infinite combo deck, and it was one of the times where we played at the ping pong table, and and I got the combo to go off. It was a white black infinite combo deck. I don't remember the name of those 2 cards. I just needed, it was like 2 enchantments. It was whenever I deal damage, or no, it was whenever I gain life, opponent loses that much damage, and whenever opponent
combo.
yeah, and then whenever opponent loses life, I gain that life. So I got those 2 enchantments off, and then I had like it was like a chalice or something. I can't remember the name. I'm not good with the names of the cards. But it was the one where you like tap it and then you'll gain life. And I did that, and then I was like, okay, I win. And then our friend was so upset about that. He got up, went over and looked, and he was just like, he was mad because he thought that I just won because I had that, and not that I actually did something. He just thought that I got the cards out, and it was like there was nothing anybody could do. But I was like, no, I actually activated that, and it actually triggered, and I killed everyone. And everyone was so mad. And that was the time when everyone was starting to proxy their decks. And one of our friends, he made a like 200 card deck or whatever, and he'd like proxy all the cards, and like Alex and I, we were both mad about that. So I was like, you know what, like screw that, like I want to build a deck, and we're just going to beat everybody. So Alex helped me build that deck, and then went in and I won with it, and I was so happy that I won because against all those proxy decks. I'm like, this is what y'all get for, just cheating and not taking this thing serious or whatever.
Yeah, that's when you print off cards,
yeah,
right?
Whenever they print, yeah. They didn't actually buy the cards, they just printed it out, and it's like, all right, fine. I'll just beat all y'all with a deck I actually made.
Yeah, I think what started that was the very unfortunate, but very fun editing of like fake cards.
Yeah.
What with
Because I really enjoyed making because I
Yeah.
made a few sets worth of cards that were just like, I made these. I never printed them off though.
I made a Star Wars deck, and I did print that off.
Yeah, I enjoyed all the decks that people made, but
It was
then they
busted in
started
half.
Yeah.
they started getting printed off and used, and then proxies started getting printed off and
Yeah.
used. But that was like, I think that was like right after I had left, and I think Alex had started going to Tri-County, and like things got to be the Wild West at SWU. It was
Yeah.
it got crazy there for a while.
Say no to proxies, kids.
Yeah, say no to proxies.
The
Unless you own the card.
Yeah, unless you actually own the card and it's in one deck and you're playing with a different deck and you just put it in there, that's okay. Because I know Ethan, you've done that. You're like, I do own this card, it's in this deck, but I just proxy in this, so I didn't have to go and like switch it out or find the card. So
Magic's an expensive hobby, and it's okay for stuff like that. Like I don't need to. I have 4 decks with the same card in it. I have 1 copy of the card. That's good enough for me instead of moving it over. Yeah. And I do want to say that proxies aren't in of themselves evil. Like if you talk with the people that you play with and everybody's cool with it and you can have fun with it, then by all means. But our situation was different in that people just started doing it without getting permission and were showing up with decks that were way more powerful than everyone else, and that was not fun. So that's the practice. It's more of a conversation that you need to have with the people you play with.
Indeed. Now, the silver lining of that, though, it did sort of bring about the age of online discovery for a lot of the players, of going online and finding all of these cards and being like, oh, this is a card that would be really great in this deck, or this would be a card, instead of like going to the card shop and listening to, the random card shop owner who's just there to make money.
Yeah.
Being like, hey, I'm building a deck like this. What do you think would be good? So
Or as I like to call it, the age of not having gas in your car, but being able to cards.
that is the age of always, isn't it? You
Yeah,
can always
anymore,
buy more
for
Magic
sure.
cards.
Yeah, you never have enough. That's the thing they don't tell you at the beginning.
Yeah.
You never reach the point where you feel like, I don't need to buy anymore. Man,
Yeah.
I'm not addicted, I promise.
Oh, I'm 100% addicted.
I'm not addicted like I once was. But still on the whole thing with decks, I do want to ask you, Ethan, how was your? Was it the first deck that you built? It was like what, a 50-cent card
Yeah.
deck or whatever.
Yeah, the very first deck I ever built. I don't remember the exact price, but I do know it was it cost me less than $1 total to put it together. I had I didn't even buy the lands, like everything. I got it for less than $1 with like trading. I don't know what the value was, but I know I don't think I had any rares in it. So I know it was cheap, but I know that I spent less than $1. I spent like 80 cents and got like 12 cards to finish it out. Something like that. I'm not really sure but that was the first deck I ever built. And I think I spent so much time in college because I was being productive and actually working, on myself and becoming a better human. So I spent like 8 hours a day thinking about Magic, like you do in college. And I think like I just spent so much time like dreaming and thinking, and like I would be in my classes and taking notes when I thought about cards in my notebooks instead of listening to my teachers. It was fantastic. But when I finally like sat down and built this deck, I was like, hey, this is pretty good. Then I started playing it, and I think I won the first 15 games in a row I played with it. So I was super proud of that deck because I built it to beat all of you guys' decks, like specifically. Like I built it knowing that none of you people played any kill spells or removal at all. No one.
Yeah.
And so I would play one creature and stack it up and make it a monster. All you need was one kill spell and you'd destroy my whole deck, but nobody ran any. So I just destroyed
but
people.
I mean, didn't you have a card that made it like hexproof anyways?
Yeah, I had one card called Canopy Cover that's not legal in any format ever.
Oh, really?
Really good. Yeah, I think you can play it in Legacy, but it's not Modern legal. And anything below that, and it's just 1 mana. Make it hexproof and make it not be blocked by creatures that don't have flying. Like it can fly over people basically for 1 mana. Stupid.
Yeah,
that was the only thing. Really fun. I just make one massive monster that nobody could deal with really quickly. And actually, the funny thing is that later on, there's a deck in Modern called Boggles that does the exact same thing. And later on in my career, I looked and like most of it was a Modern competitive deck that I accidentally stumbled into. So that's like a point of pride for me.
That's pretty solid, man.
So yeah, Aura Gnarlid was the card that I built it on. Just stack it up with stuff.
Now, I know back in college there was someone that we knew that was playing, and he went out and he built a demon deck, and he spent hundreds of dollars for this demon deck, and it was terrible. And like, how did he react whenever you just kept beating him with your like 50-cent deck?
Well, not good, because I wasn't a very nice person then either, so I was probably rubbing it in. You guys recall? And he had just brought it back. Like he had just went to the card shop and finished it and brought it back to our dorm. And he had played one person before me and destroyed them and was super confident. And then I sat down and I don't know how many times I beat him in a row before he stomped out of the room, but it was quite a few. And I'm not really proud of how I was as a person, but man, yeah, that I was already a competitive person then. And so it did feel good to beat somebody who just dropped hundreds of dollars with my deck that I spent less than $1 on.
Yeah.
It was pretty baller. And it's not about the tools you have. Sometimes it's about how you use them. Right. So.
Yeah,
exactly. I can sort of give some perspective on the other side of that. because I was the guy that particular player would come to and be like, my deck didn't work, fix it. Um, and this had happened a few times, and every time we would go to the card shop, and I'd be like, do you guys have this card? Do you guys have this card? Do you guys have this card? And I would suggest, put these in your deck, whatever. And because at the time there weren't any affordable demons, yeah, you had to, make some concessions somewhere. You can't just have a deck that's full of big, beefy creatures.
Right.
And that's what he wanted. But I was like, we'll still follow your, like, super edgy, I like hell vibe with demons. And we'll put some imps in there, or, some other little dudes that can help you defend yourself. Because he had, like, 4 Runescarred demons, which, for those listening, Runescarred demon allows you to search for another card in your deck and put it in your hand, I believe.
Yep.
And he
It's a
also
demonic
had,
Fiorona creature.
yeah, it's really nice. Like, if you're doing a demon deck, I would suggest it, although I don't know crap about demons. I know about demons back in 2011, but any of the new ones, I don't. Um, and he had, Quicksilver amulets and stuff like
Yeah.
that, like accelerate your big boys into getting them out turn 4 or 5 pretty reliably. But he would take all of that like good stuff out and be like, this thing is a big, 7/7 flyer that does extra damage when it's, whatever he would try to throw in there. He would take out all of the low mana cost items and things that he didn't understand their usefulness for.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So instead of having that delicious bell curve that you want in your, your mana, it was just a column of, mana cost 5 to 8. Just all 5 to 8.
I like the term delicious bell curve.
Yeah, you want it. I mean, you know all about it.
Yeah, for sure. There's
Your mana
certainly a
curve.
strategy to building a deck, and just for anyone listening, it's not about the money. If you just say I'm going to spend more money and make my deck better, that is not always the case. There's, you need to fill out your curve, and I have certainly seen decks that were super cheap be very well built. It's more, you need to be thoughtful about why you're putting cards in your deck and what cards don't need to be in your deck, and what is the function of a card in your deck is way more important than, is this card good? Because if you put a million really broken 5 mana cards in your deck, I'm going to kill you before turn 5, and you're not going to have done anything. So
I think it's
sadly.
also knowing how to play your deck.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my problems, because I have not gone as deep as any of you with Magic, and like I've got the basic understanding and I can play, but I don't normally win. And then like when I play Nick, he'll be like, well, you could have done this instead, or like this is how it should have been played.
Yeah.
So it's a lot about knowing how to play your deck, I think.
Yeah. Like, one of the things I've learned from playing Magic is read the cards, learn what it's saying, and once you know, then you'll understand. And then you can, like, read other cards, and then you'll understand how that's worded and what it's going to do and all that. So, but yeah, definitely, like, if you build a deck, know the cards that are in there. Make sure you read through the cards and not just play it and think it does this when it actually does this instead. So,
Yeah, I think there's 2 games in Magic. There's 2 places where you can be really good at it or really bad at it, because you have to build your deck, which is a whole game in and of itself. And I think that's my favorite, right? And that's what we talk about mostly, right? Or the decks and how we
Deck
build them.
building, man. That's the most fun part.
oh yeah,
Exactly, but you still have to sit down and play, and there's a lot of decisions you
smart.
make when you play. So, there's 2 different skill sets there, and I think that's part of what attracts me to the game too, is that there's so many ways to engage with it, so many challenges. If you like to solve puzzles, you get to do it in two completely different ways. Super great.
Now, I do want to ask, what of like all the times that we've like played Magic and all the decks we've gone through, what are some of y'all's favorite decks that y'all have built or played with?
Well, I have a couple. My favorite deck that I ever built was probably that deck we've already discussed that I built for less than $1. It's
The
just
legendary
nostalgic
Arden
to me. Yeah, that was an amazing deck. That, and I built another deck at SWU that was about gaining life. The other one we discussed briefly. But probably my favorite deck to ever play was in Modern. It was literally, I stole a list off the internet of Modern Affinity, which is a deck that's basically you play a lot of cheap artifacts and kill people very fast. Like it's not uncommon to play all 7 of your cards in your hand on the first turn. And that deck has so many decisions and so much math, and you always have options. And I was very good at piloting it, and I had a lot of success, in tournaments and stuff with it. So that holds near and dear to my heart. And it is not a good deck anymore. It has been replaced by much better decks, but I still have that one and like to play it from time to time. Once again, based solely on nostalgia. So those are probably my 2 favorites there.
Goodness. Yeah, that sounds intense. My favorites, like obviously the one that I have to mention, would be the vampire deck.
Okay.
From back in the day.
I was waiting to see if you were ever going to mention your vampire deck.
Yeah.
I can't believe that hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, the vampire deck was this weird atrocity. It was a 60 card deck. I don't actually think it was modern legal because it had certain cards in it. Like I think it still had Dark Ritual and stuff like that in it.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, so not modern legal, but it was fun. It was the first deck that I had put together to be mean. It was the first deck that I really spent money on. Prior to that, I had used artifact decks. Like I had an artifact sacrifice deck that would sacrifice artifacts to deal damage, and that's how I would win. And then I had a golem deck, which has now been revamped into a commander deck. That's really fun. But the vamp deck had all sorts of wonderful things, but it had just a great, delicious mana curve. From one cost, I think it was what was it, Blood Tracker or whatever, just a 1/1. That whenever it dealt damage, I don't even remember what it did, but I had all of these excellent value cards in it, along with just an immense amount of removal, to the point where for about 3 to 4 turns, you weren't going to get anything on the field, and I would just beat you down with vampires, using stuff like Gatekeeper of Malakir and kicking him so that you had to sacrifice a creature, or Geth's Verdict that made you sacrifice a creature, so it wasn't even me targeting you. And then I also had Doomblade and Go for the Throat, a bunch of other removal spells that were situational for different types of creatures. Because I didn't know the full scope of removal, so I was just like, I'll cover all my bases, because that's smart. But doing it with separate cards. But yeah, I got really cocky with that deck.
Yeah.
And even very cringy gave out sleeves with
Yes.
vampire teeth
I still
to people
have
that I beat.
I still have that sleeve.
I have one as well.
Yeah.
To remember my shame.
I still can remember playing against Will with that deck, and I would just hear, I want to play Gatekeeper Malakir, and I'm like, LF. And then the one that I mostly did not want to hear, and I would hear it every time if I played against that deck, was I want to play Vampire Nighthawk, and I'm like,
Vampire
all right.
Nighthawk.
I was like, all right, I'm done.
Why does that-
I was like, I'm done.
Why does
You
that
still
suck
have
so bad?
nightmares about this?
Yes.
Just to put it in perspective, that is my least favorite Magic card ever printed, and I don't know why. Like, because
I
it's
love
not
it.
broken. It's not broken. But
It's-
it's
No.
the most annoying thing.
It's probably because of
Hate
Will.
Oh
And
yeah.
they-
If you guys want to get in your friend's head, like ever, like come up with something to hand them when you beat them. Like it'll tilt them so bad. Because when I was playing against Will, it was like, I don't care if I win, but I have to care if I win, because if I lose, he's gonna give this stupid thing to me I don't want and be all
Yeah.
smug.
Yeah.
And it just it was tilting, man. Ugh.
So, what does Vampire Nighthawk do?
It's what
So it's one colorless and
then
two
two
black
black.
mana.
Yep.
It's got flying, death touch, and lifelink, and it's a
Yep.
2/3.
Oh,
That's
It's
it.
just got so much
Okay.
value.
Yeah.
And I would buff it up with all kinds of crazy stuff,
Yeah.
like Blade of the Blood Chief, which would give it +2 2 +1/+1 counters every time it did damage because it was a vampire. And then a few other things. At one point, I had one of every sword in the game in that deck. So Sword of War and Peace, Sword of Feast and Famine, Sword of Fire
I
and Ice.
remember you were collecting
I had
all those.
all of the swords in that deck, and I would throw all of these things on Vampire Nighthawk because that card was my original Karibo, but it's far more powerful than Karibo.
Well, guys,
and they
the real
recently,
level of go ahead.
they recently printed a new card that I don't remember the name of, but it's, I think, 1 mana less and is a 1/2 and only has flying and lifelink. It's like a baby Nighthawk.
It's Aetherborn something.
But yeah, it's
Gifted
I'm gonna have
Aetherborn,
to look
I
into
think.
it because I kind of want to make a vampire commander deck to bring it back to life.
So, Will, how many of those swords are there?
There's a few more now, and
Oh, really?
if you include Sword of Dungeons and Dragons, but let's see.
Guys, we're adults now. We shouldn't put uncards in our decks.
Yeah.
No. I still count it as a sword though.
Wait,
Okay.
we're adults.
Yes.
So 1, 2.
They made more swords like last
Or-
year, didn't they?
Oh, really?
I'll name them
Yeah.
off. So you've got Sword of Body and Mind, Sword of Feast and Famine, Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of Light and Shadow, Sword of Sinew and Steel,
That's a new one.
Sword of Truth and Justice, and then Sword of War and Peace.
Are they
Okay.
artifacts?
They
Yes.
are all
Yeah.
artifacts.
Yeah.
They
Equipment.
all give the equipped creature +2/+2, and then protection from the 2 colors that it will represent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they'll have some like crazy awesome double
Plus
effect
it in
after that have to do with some mechanic relating to those colors. But yeah, so that would definitely be my favorite deck that I've ever had, and probably, I don't know, I don't think I get to say it, but probably the deck that's most related to me.
Yes.
At least back
Absolutely.
in the day. And it was fun,
For
and it
sure.
also had Liliana Vess in that, who is my
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
planeswalker, and she's getting a reprint. Well, not a reprint, but the new Liliana. I think it's Waker of the Dead. She's like a better Liliana Vess because she has an emblem that brings all creatures from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. So that's exciting.
Well, you've failed to mention the reason why we hated that deck. It was it had like Doomblade and Guess Verdict and Dismember and Go for the Throat in it. It was the first deck that said, "I'm gonna kill your creatures."
Yeah.
Out of anyone,
I couldn't kill the Aranarlid. The vampire deck came from the decks like yours that started being like, yeah, no, you can't touch me. So I had to figure out ways to beef up my creatures, and for some reason, vampires and making vampires stronger just stuck with me. And then stealing people's stuff from their graveyard was an added mechanic to that deck, because I also had Grimoire of the Dead and stuff like that.
oh yeah,
which is why the removal was even more devastating, because I would take your stuff. Which at one
So
point,
brutal.
I did get to the point where I would have over 100, creatures on the field. Most of them were other people's. I used to have pictures of all of this, but
Yeah,
I lost that phone.
I had
But
I
yeah.
had a picture whenever you faced our friend Joey, and you took all of his stuff, and I took a picture where I think Joey had like maybe one thing, and you just had everything on your side, and he was just sitting there like, I don't know what to do now. Like, I guess this is done.
Yeah, because if you do, it was what Life's Finale, and then hitting Liliana's ult, her last ability, or Grimoire of the Dead. So I'd wipe the board, even my stuff, but then bring it all back, and yeah, it was great. So that's mine. Um, and yeah, the all of the removal, and then obviously the cocky, giving them the sleeves.
was the
Those were
worst, dude.
probably the two
Yeah.
worst bits about the deck. But yeah, Nick, what do you think is like your favorite or most, maybe most iconic deck that you've run?
I mean, my Goblin deck might be one of my favorites. Like, yeah, it can be like super quick, but it would be consistent most of the time. Um, and a lot of people would hate facing it.
I can attest.
Yeah,
I'm
that
just-
came from that era
yeah.
where we started thinking more about our decks and building good decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
Because you had like Goblin Grenade and all kinds of stuff
Oh,
in there
yeah.
to do
I st-
damage.
I still have
and
Goblin
it was like
Grenade, and it was
it was
like
solid.
it's like turn one. I would play oh god, a Goblin Guide.
Yeah, that was
turn
also
one,
when Goblin Guide
like-
was super cheap, and
yeah.
we had a bunch of them.
Yeah, turn one,
Yeah.
play Goblin Guide. I'm already doing 2 damage, and then next turn I play like a no, I couldn't play that. It was like I would play maybe like another Goblin Guide, and then like a Lightning Bolt, and then I would get like Warren Instigator out, or I would get Goblin King or Goblin Chieftain, and the things would just get like real big, and yeah, you just swarm with goblins. Yeah, yeah, that's one of my favorites. I'm just trying to think of one that is like my favorite one that I've played with, like had the most fun, because I know I built like 2 decks from Innistrad whenever that set came out, which that was like at the time when we was getting really into it.
Yeah, that was when we were reaching our stride.
Yeah, because I know I built a vampire deck and a werewolf deck from that, which they're fun, but I don't think it's the most fun I've had. I built one of Lindsay's decks that is just
My favorite deck.
it's just a ridiculous amount of life gain.
It's was it like a blue white?
It's like a blue-white
Fire?
spirit type deck or whatever. But there was one. I think there was one deck. It was a standard deck, and I actually got second place in a standard tournament with it. I feel like I would have gotten first because the guy that I faced, he won, and I feel like I would have beat him if I just would have drew a blue mana. But Ethan, you actually have this deck, or you did have this deck, but you ran it where it was blue, white, and green. I didn't have the green with it.
That was the heroic deck.
Yes,
correct?
the heroic deck. That was it's probably one of my favorite ones to play. Like, I have a lot of fun playing it. And I wanted to add the green, but the cards for it were, pricey at the time. So I was like, I'm just going to stick with the blue and white, and it worked out. It still runs great. I know there's probably versions of it that are a lot better, but I enjoy playing the version that I have. And that's probably the one that I have the most fun playing.
Well, speaking of tournaments, Ethan has some experience, right?
Oh yeah.
Some tournaments?
Yeah, we've been talking about early Magic stuff where we were still having fun, and friendship was in the air, and that's all that mattered. We haven't quite gotten to my turn to the dark side of Magic. I don't mean dark side. I just mean I did dabble after college in competitive Magic for sure. What started there? I told you guys, even in college, I like to win.
Oh yeah.
I grew up a sports guy. You guys in college are the ones who made me a nerd, and I will forever
yeah.
thank you and blame you for that. But before then, I was just, I was into sports. I played football, basketball, baseball, and I just love beating people at things. I don't know, it's part of who I am. And when I got out of college and moved to the middle of nowhere where I knew no one, and Magic was something that I knew how to do, and I found a shop there that would host, tournaments and stuff. It's called Play It Again. It's in Concord, North Carolina. I don't even know if they're still in business, but if they are, they're incredible. Got to know the owner there and just started playing tournaments there at a local level. And I had never heard of competitive Magic before then, but I got the bug pretty quickly there. And it just started going to Friday Night Magic on Fridays. And I started drafting and playing in tournaments and then started winning them. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm winning very often here. Is there more to this? And it just kind of like snowballed from there. And I spent about 2.5 years probably playing competitive Magic. So
So how far did you get?
okay, yeah. So I'm not a pro or anything, but there was a system that it actually started after I started playing. So the original system I was in, I don't know as well because they revamped the competitive structure. But the way it worked is there were these tournaments called PPTQs, which were pre-Pro Tour qualifiers, and they were small local tournaments that you could go to and play. You pay an entry fee, and then you would play. And if you won that tournament, like came in first place, you would qualify for a Pro Tour qualifier tournament, which case you could go to that. And that was a regional tournament, usually bigger. And if you won that tournament, you would qualify for the Pro Tour, which is like the NBA of Magic. And there was actually one of those tournaments came to a shop I was playing in, the pre PPTQs or whatever. And I played in one because I thought it would be fun. And I made the top 8 in the first one I ever played in and didn't win, didn't come close to winning. But like, I was like, these are kind of cool. They weren't too expensive to enter. There were some prizes. And so I just started looking them up because I had nothing to do with my life. I mean, I was working a job, but I had nothing to do other than that because I lived in the middle of nowhere. And I just started driving around and playing in these PPTQs. And then, you do that enough, eventually you get lucky and win one. And I did, and then qualified for the bigger tournament. And that's as far as I ever got. That Pro Tour qualifier tournament. I played in one of those and did fairly well, but didn't qualify for the Pro Tour. But it is what it is, and it was a blast. And I actually really loved it, but it's a whole different world than what we've been talking here. Like, completely different world. If you just build your own deck to have fun, like, you're never going to win. You have to net deck to be competitive, and you have to keep up with the metagame. And the internet is way smarter than you, is something I learned. Creativity is for having fun, but not for winning. And I played a lot of different formats. I played Modern, was the constructed format I played mostly. And then I was a big limited player. So I love Draft and Sealed. I thought it gave me an edge. And because it's when you bring a deck in like constructed, like what we were playing, where you build your own deck and bring it, you have these varying levels that you start out with, right? Like if you bring a worse deck than your opponent, then you're at a disadvantage. Whereas in limited, you all start on the same playing field. And I've always thought that the skilled players in Magic win more at limited. Like, it's more of a skill test. And I just loved it. I love drafting. And drafting is where you sit down in a group of 8 people and pass cards and build a deck on the fly, and then play that deck against the other 7 people in your pod. And then you'd usually play 3 games, and if you'd go 3-0, you'd move on usually. And I mean, that was just super fun, but a whole different world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we sit down and play, we have conversations, we have fun, we're like, that's a cool thing that happened. But in when you sit down to play in a tournament, you barely talk to your opponent. You know, you're thinking, you communicate what you need to, and then you move on, shake hands, and you go to the next game. It's a whole different world.
Have
Yeah.
you had any like bad experiences like with that type of Magic
Oh
since it
yeah,
is
I mean,
different?
for sure. I mean, when there's more on the line, when you're playing in a tournament that you paid money to be in, people can get salty, you know, which that happens in casual Magic too. But I definitely had a few experiences with people who um, were less than friendly, who did not take a loss well, for instance. But I never had too bad of an experience. Usually it was people not shaking your hand and walking away. Um, I did have one guy call a judge on me 4 different times for nothing, just because he was mad, and he got a warning for that actually. But I guess nothing too absolutely terrible. But always, whenever you put competition in it and the stress is high and there's pressure, um, it, it sometimes you can deal with rude people in that situation, but it makes sense,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially in tournaments where money was on the line. You know,
Yeah,
that adds some pressure.
I know it was back after college. There was the game store that opened up in Central. Geek Out Games, yeah, that one. We did I want to say I did a draft tournament there or whatnot, and at the time there was this one card. Lindsay, I know I made a standard deck at that time for you, and it was based off of that card. I can't remember the name of it.
Look at me.
I just know, like, if you deal damage I feel like if you deal damage to something, then you get to take that card, like it's yours, and you get to keep it as long as you have that creature out on the field. And I was facing this one guy. I think he won the first game, and then the second game, I had that card out, and then I took over one of his creatures, and he was not too happy about that. And then he did a spell where I had to sacrifice a creature, so I decided to sacrifice his creature, the one that I had control of, and he got so mad about that. And he was just like, why are you going to get rid of that? Like, why wouldn't you get rid of this? I'm like, because it was yours, and if there's a way for you to get it back, I don't want you to have it back, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. And he got so mad, and I was just over there, I'm like, all right, I'm not having fun because of you. And then I won that round, and the third round he ended up winning, but after that I was like, I don't appreciate this dude. Like, I didn't feel good about myself or anything. And then I went and said something to the owner, and apparently the owner knew who I was talking about, and he's said that he's had other complaints from other people about that dude. And then the owner eventually banned him from the store. So,
oh wow,
yeah. And he was one that whenever he went into doing the draft tournaments or sealed tournaments that they had there, which most of the time, like, the people that, like, they're there, they have fun or whatever, and everyone's nice. But he went in there to, like, compete and try to win the prizes, and he was not happy of, like, losing or anything. But, and I mean, he wasn't the best one there. Like, he was one of the better ones, but he was not the best one. But he just had a bad attitude towards it, and I mean, I didn't really, like that. I had to face him, and yeah.
See, I'm all for competitive attitude or whatever, but don't be a sore loser.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you got to place it right. If you're playing at a Friday Night Magic at a game store or a casual playtime like they do weekly, that's no place for, like, that attitude of win at all costs. That's more of the atmosphere. We want this game to live for a long time, and we want people to enjoy playing it. We want to enjoy it ourselves. when you're in that environment, really fun is what should matter. People's experience with the game. Be kind to people, and you should do that at all times. But save the drama for actual tournaments that matter with things on the line. And even then, you should be respectful of your opponents always. There's never an excuse for being rude or, telling an opponent off or be rubbing anything in anybody's face or being a sore loser. It doesn't matter whether you're playing at your kitchen table or at the Pro Tour. There's no room for that in this game. You should be respectful of people always. Period.
I think one of the really cool things about this game is, and we've touched on it some, is that you build your deck that you play with. And not a lot of, sports and other games really do that. Like, you don't you don't make your own baseball bat before you go play baseball. Like, there's skill involved, but you're playing with something that you've put your time and effort into building. Now, there are a lot of great resources to help you do that, and a lot of good websites. And like, I use Nick. He builds any deck that I've played with. But I just think that's a really cool aspect, and take pride in your decks that you're playing with because you built them and everything.
Yeah.
And that might be part of the reason why people can get upset sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And take it personally. If they put their soul into building something. Mm-hmm. Still not an excuse, though.
No, they should just take that as like a learning lesson and be like, okay, well, apparently I didn't build this deck as well as I thought I did.
Yeah, how can
let's
I improve?
Let's go and improve.
So, if each of you could give one piece of advice to someone who wants to get into this game, what would it be?
That's super easy. Find a game store.
Yes.
I think so often now, especially with Magic Arena that's out now, you can play it on your laptop. And if you don't know if you like the game, you can start there and see if you actually enjoy playing the game. But if you want to actually get into it and play, it's not, for me, I kind of took this path where it started out as this friend thing, social gathering. And then I went down the pit of trying to win in tournament. And now in my old age, quote unquote, I've come back to it being a social thing. And I think I get way more enjoyment out of the game sharing it with my friends and sharing it with others. So finding people to play with, I will say that I made friends at the local game store just by showing up and playing. And it was just a good environment and just fun to share something in common with other people. So I think if you want to get into it, don't do it alone. Find you a local game store and get involved with people is the best advice I can give if you want to just make it more than just something you dabble in.
Yeah, and they can help you there.
Oh, yeah.
Other players, owner,
Absolutely.
whatnot, can give you, help on decks and cards and everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For me, I guess the advice I would give is be open-minded about it. I know I had some friends that after I learned in college and whenever I would go home for like Christmas break or whatever, I would tell them like, hey, I started playing this game. It's really fun. And I had like a couple friends that just kind of prejudged it. Like I had one where I was playing a vampire deck, and then one of my friends was playing a werewolf deck, and another one of my friends comes in. I was telling him about it. He goes, "Oh, so Twilight," and I was like, "Okay, well, I guess he's already prejudged it. I don't know if he's going to enjoy it." And then I had another one of my friends. He didn't really care, and then years later, he was like, so I was looking at this game, and it's like Magic. I was like, hey, that's the game that I was trying to teach you like years ago, and you like prejudged it. And he goes, oh, well, it looks pretty cool. I'm like, it is pretty cool. And then he got into playing it, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. Just definitely keep an open mind, and don't take it like too serious. Like when you first start out, just like read the cards, learn it, just learn how the game's played, and I mean you'll see what all you can do with that type of game. Like, there's so many possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, I would.
Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just gonna say, I would say it's gonna take you a little while to get the game to understand it. I know the first time Nick taught me, I didn't retain a single thing from it. And I'm pretty sure he had to teach me at least another maybe 2 times for me to understand. And I mean, I still don't know
To be fair, I
everything
think he
about
was
it.
teaching you with a commander deck, right?
Oh, I
One of the
have
most
no
complicated
idea.
I
formats. I think he
honestly
was probably
don't
teaching one of
remember.
the most complicated formats in the game to start with.
I honestly don't
I don't
remember. But
remember.
it takes time because it is a complex game. And like once you get it, it's great. And I've discovered that the mechanics really help you with any other game
Oh,
that
yeah.
you learn.
Oh, absolutely.
But once like it was a struggle for me, definitely to begin with. But once I, learned it, I enjoy it. So yeah. Give it time.
What about you, Will?
Yeah. I would say um don't spend as much money as maybe we did.
Absolutely.
We didn't exactly touch on that very much, but it's fair to say that each of us have spent quite a bit, some more so than others by quite a lot. And we don't necessarily know those numbers. But
Yeah.
when you don't know a specific number, but you know its impact on your life, it's a big number. So maybe if you're looking to get into the game, don't buy a crap ton of what they call fat packs or
Mhm.
booster boxes.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe buy a pre-made deck that looks
Mhm.
interesting to you. Or, dual decks if you're looking to get into it with your significant other. They make
Those
sets
are
where
great.
it's 2 decks. Those are really good. And usually they're pretty, playable in at least a casual setting.
Yeah.
And then you can easily modify those with cards that you might find on the internet and then go to your local game shop and see if they have it. Because supporting your local game shop is always
Yes.
a really awesome thing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would suggest maybe finding what you like, what kind of strategy you like, what or format you like, and then pursue it more that direction.
Yeah.
Because we all kind of cast a wide net and bought fat packs and booster boxes and who knows what else. And sometimes commander decks that are very expensive just for one card because it's only printed in that commander deck, which is a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be my main
Yeah.
bit of advice is you can definitely play the game in a very enjoyable way, casually, without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
And
Remember, kids,
strive
you
to do
can beat
that.
your friends with a deck that's worth less than $1.
There
Yes.
Done
you
it.
go.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because there are great, well, for casual play, there are great starter decks, especially if you're starting out, if you want to learn,
Yeah.
get 1 or 2 of those, learn the game, discover what you like, and then find the cards individually maybe
Yes.
because we have so many
So, yeah,
flipping cards
yes.
that
Mhm.
we
That
don't
just sit there.
use that we bought in these
Yeah.
packs
Definitely.
and probably can't even build a deck out of some of them. Like
Yeah. It
it's
can.
just,
It's just gonna be crappy.
yeah,
Bulk
Yeah.
commons.
yes,
Yeah. Just. Yeah. Find what you like and then buy the cards individually.
yeah.
I definitely.
What's the website you use with building decks?
Oh, I don't even remember. I know before I used Tapped Out, but
Yeah,
is that still a thing?
it is.
Okay,
You can
yeah.
still use
I
that.
used Tapped Out. And then there was another one I think some of our friends
Yeah,
have used. I think I have another one here. Ether Hub Ether Hub or whatever. That one's
There's
good.
a lot of really good web-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ethan, is there any like last bit of advice or anything that you want to give to the listeners before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is if you've never tried this card game that we've just spent an hour talking about, you should. And even if you think it's weird or you think it's daunting because it's pretty complicated, I really meant what I said when I think it's the greatest game ever made, because there's so much in it for everyone. It can be as simple or complex as you want. There are different ways to express yourself. We didn't even get into the fact that there's more than one rule set. You can play all kinds of different formats. There's a bunch of different ways to play. And it's just really fun social thing to sit down and do with your friends, whether you want to build that Rube Goldberg machine we were talking about before, or you want to kick somebody really quickly in the face and laugh at them, or you want to make up a whole thing where you give somebody a card sleeve to rub it in their face in shame. There's just a lot to enjoy, and there's a lot for all types of people. So I think my biggest advice would be if you've never tried it, you should try it. You're missing out, especially if you're listening to this podcast. You obviously like games, and this is the best one ever made. So
you would say that you would give this a 10 out of 10?
Absolutely, a 12 out of 10, I think.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
The fact that I've been playing it for like 10 years now and can't stop should,
All right. Well, it looks like we are about all out of time here for today.
Yeah, so I hope you guys have been thinking about that trivia question. I certainly haven't, but it's time to bring back our producer, Lindsay, to share the answer with us.
Do we
Lindsay?
get to guess?
Yeah, we'll get
Yes,
to guess.
you'll
We
get
do
to
get to
guess.
guess.
So,
Sweet.
just a review of the question, it was in their first press announcement about their upcoming trading card game, Wizards of the Coast didn't refer to the game as Magic the Gathering. What was it called? And I gave you some answer choices. Mana Bound, Mana Bloom, Mana Clash, or Mana Flare. So what are we thinking?
So,
I honestly have no idea. Even with
I don't
multiple
know.
choice, it's still hard.
I think Mana
Um,
Flare is a card, so I'm gonna eliminate D, just straight up for me.
I know, I'm getting vibes with Mana Clash for some reason.
I'm gonna guess Mana Clash. The first two don't sound very
Yeah.
gamey, and I think the
Yeah.
last one that could work is a card. So I think I'm gonna go Mana Clash.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm going
Mana
with.
Clash sounds good, but I feel something really strong about Mana Bound, so I'm gonna go with Mana Bound.
Okay. So
Okay.
Ethan and I are going with Clash, and Will's going
Yeah, I
with
think
Bound.
so.
Well, this might start Nick's comeback because it is, in fact, Mana Clash.
Woo!
So here's some more information. When Richard first created the game, he called it simply Magic. But there was concern that it was too generic a name for a legal perspective. To solve this problem, they came up with a new name, which was Mana Clash, but Richard was never happy with it. He and the playtesters still referred to it as Magic. The new compromise was to add the suffix to the name, and thus the game Magic the Gathering.
That's cool.
Very cool. It is a better name than
Yeah.
Mana Clash.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
But, it's a good, Mana Clash simplifies the game.
Yeah.
So,
You use mana in your clash. It makes sense.
Alright.
yeah, right?
Well, I will say when you ask somebody if they've ever played Magic before, you always get like, I don't do Magic. Like card tricks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Like
Yeah.
card tricks? Well, yeah, you use cards, but it's not like that. Like poker. No, not like poker.
No.
No
Yeah.
rabbits out of hats or nothing.
Yeah. All right. So, as we wrap up this episode, we want you to be able to contact us and check us out on other media platforms. Ethan, where can the listeners find you?
They can't.
Oh,
The
okay.
answer. I guess I'm the worst social media person on the planet. Like the worst. I'm terrible at it. But a few weeks ago, you guys had a guest on, Alex, and his Twitch. I'm pretty sure Skylord Alexander. And on Friday nights, we stream our Death Watch roleplay I was talking about earlier in the show, and I'm on that. So that might be the only place on the internet that you can find me.
Either that or Discord, possibly.
Oh yeah, I'm on Discord. My handle is RYSOKOV Ryzakov, so I'm around.
Yeah. All right. Will, where can the listeners find you?
Well, same boat pretty much as Ethan, but you can find both of us at the Discord server, which is linked in our YouTube channel, Out of the Box Gaming, which we also have Instagram at OOTB_gaming. And then we recently got Twitter, and that is going pretty great. Our Twitter handle is at gaming OOTB. OOTB stands for Out of the Box Gaming, by the way. And check out our Patreon and all the awesome perks that you can unlock with that.
Yeah, and speaking of Patreon, we do want to thank our collector edition Patreons, which is Cody Watkins, aka Indecent Sarcasm. And if you want to find me, you can find me on YouTube, Mixer, which that will be changing soon since Mixer is going bye-bye. Yeah, so YouTube, Mixer, Instagram at Ace King King, and then Twitter is Ace King King 77.
Please make sure to leave a review on our podcast on whichever platform you found us on. Leave a like, subscribe, follow, and yeah, leave a comment. It helps the algorithms find us. Thanks for listening, and please join us next week.
Alright, this has been Out of the Box Gaming with Nick Picard and Will Kinsey and Ethan Horn. Thanks for playing along.